Prosecutors in Minnesota are resigning in protest of how the Trump administration is handling last week's ICE-involved shooting in which an ICE agent killed 37-year-old Renee Nicole Good. This includes Joe Thompson, who served as acting U.S. attorney in Minnesota. A source says this follows days of pressure to focus the DOJ investigation not on the actions of the ICE agent who shot and killed Renee Good, but to focus the investigation on Good and others around her. The New York Times reporting this includes Good's widow.
27 federal prosecutors just walked away from their posts in what legal experts are calling the most devastating mass resignation in Department of Justice history. And the reason behind their departure reveals a constitutional crisis that goes straight to the heart of how justice works in America. For weeks, the DOJ has been conducting what it called an investigation into the fatal ICE agent shooting in Minneapolis. But instead of investigating the agent who pulled the trigger, the Department of Justice turned its focus on the victim's family. Instead of following standard procedures, Trump personally defended the agent on social media while prosecutors watched their investigation get hijacked. It's honestly hard to believe we're watching this unfold at the federal level. This isn't just about one investigation or one tragic shooting. We're talking about the deliberate subversion of justice, about intimidation tactics being used against grieving families, and about career prosecutors saying they can no longer participate in what they describe as a fraudulent process. And trust me, when 27 federal prosecutors resign in protest, it tells you everything about how broken the system has become. The stakes have never been higher, the abuse of power more blatant, and Trump's administration more exposed.
We're learning other resignations are also possible as prosecutors weigh how to respond to this pressure from their superiors in Washington, D.C. At the same time, protests in Minneapolis continue to escalate. Today, law enforcement agents fired pepper balls as crowds blew whistles and shouted, "ICE out now." CNN crews on the scene say agents surged into the area with at least 15 different large SUVs. As agents returned to their vehicles, flashbangs were also fired at the crowd of protesters. Some protesters seen throwing snowballs at agents. This is, of course, Minnesota in January.
Let me fill you in on how we got to this absolutely explosive moment and why these resignations represent a complete breakdown of the justice system. Here's the scoop on the background. The circumstances were disputed from the start. Federal authorities claimed the victim posed a threat. Family members and witnesses insisted he was unarmed and complying. The body camera footage still hasn't been released. Normally, when a federal agent uses deadly force, there's a clear protocol. The DOJ Civil Rights Division investigates alongside the FBI and the U.S. Attorney's Office. They examine whether civil rights were violated, whether the use of force was justified, whether policies were followed. It's designed to ensure accountability and transparency. But that's not what happened here. According to sources within the DOJ, the Civil Rights Division was completely excluded from this investigation. The very division whose entire purpose is to investigate these exact situations was left out, and instead of investigating the agent who fired the fatal shot, the DOJ's focus shifted to something unprecedented: investigating the victim's family. According to federal prosecutors who've spoken anonymously to journalists, the investigation became corrupted almost immediately. Rather than examining the agent's actions or the use of force decision, DOJ resources were redirected towards scrutinizing the victim's family. Financial records were subpoenaed. Immigration status was investigated. Associates were questioned. The family's background became the focus instead of whether a federal agent was justified in using deadly force. Talk about turning an investigation completely upside down. Reports from inside the DOJ describe career prosecutors expressing alarm at what they were witnessing. According to one prosecutor who spoke with the Washington Post, this wasn't an investigation, it was harassment. It was intimidation. We were being asked to build a case against a grieving family instead of examining whether their loved one's civil rights were violated. Then Trump made it worse. He took to X and publicly defended the ICE agent. Multiple posts praising the agent's actions, calling the agent a hero, suggesting the shooting was completely justified before any investigation was complete. According to legal experts, a sitting president publicly defending a subject of investigation while it's ongoing is extraordinarily inappropriate and potentially obstructive. According to former DOJ officials who served under both parties, what's happening violates every norm of how these investigations should function. One former assistant attorney general stated, "The Civil Rights Division exists for exactly these situations. Excluding them isn't just unusual, it suggests the outcome was predetermined and the investigation is a sham. The procedural violations are extensive. No independent review, no civil rights assessment, presidential interference via social media, and most damningly, the investigation targeting the victim's family rather than examining the agent's conduct." Federal prosecutors watching this unfold faced an impossible choice: participate in what they viewed as a fraudulent investigation or walk away from careers they'd spent years building. Now, this isn't the first time Trump has interfered with DOJ investigations or defended people facing scrutiny. During his first term, Trump repeatedly attacked DOJ investigations he disagreed with, defended allies under investigation, and pressured the Justice Department to investigate political opponents. After returning to office, he's escalated those patterns: public commentary on ongoing investigations, pressure on prosecutors, using the DOJ as a political weapon. This pattern reveals something fundamental about Trump's view of the justice system. It's not an independent institution designed to apply law equally. It's a tool to be wielded against opponents and a shield to protect allies. The Minneapolis investigation is just the latest and most blatant example. The exclusion of the Civil Rights Division isn't an oversight, it's a feature, because the Civil Rights Division would actually investigate whether civil rights were violated. And that investigation might reach conclusions Trump doesn't want reached. 27 federal prosecutors don't resign simultaneously without extraordinary cause. According to statements released by some resigning prosecutors, they could no longer participate in what they described as the systematic corruption of the investigative process. They cited the exclusion of the Civil Rights Division, the targeting of the victim's family, the presidential interference, and the abandonment of standard procedures. One prosecutor's resignation letter stated, "I took an oath to support and defend the Constitution and to administer justice without respect to persons. I cannot fulfill that oath while participating in an investigation designed not to find truth, but to intimidate and harass a family whose loved one was killed by a federal agent." The political implications are absolutely devastating for Trump. First, mass resignations make headlines and signal something is deeply wrong. When career professionals walk away from their jobs in protest, it lends credibility to allegations of corruption. Second, these resignations create a credibility crisis for any findings the DOJ releases. If the investigation concludes the shooting was justified, critics will point to mass resignations and procedural violations as evidence the investigation was rigged. Third, this creates operational chaos. 27 prosecutors represent institutional knowledge and expertise. Their simultaneous departure creates chaos in the Minnesota Federal Prosecutor's Office, handling the largest ICE deployment in American history. According to legal analysts, this is unprecedented in modern DOJ history. Individual prosecutors have resigned in protest before, but 27 walking away simultaneously represents a collective vote of no confidence in the investigation's integrity and the Trump administration's approach to justice. Now here's the kicker. These resignations expose a fundamental crisis in how justice operates under the current administration, with implications extending far beyond Minneapolis. When prosecutors resign because they believe an investigation is fraudulent, it sends a chilling message to victims of potential civil rights violations. If you come forward, if you demand accountability, the federal government might investigate you instead of the person who harmed you. The victim's family is experiencing this firsthand. Instead of getting answers about why their loved one was killed, they're being subjected to investigation, financial scrutiny, immigration questions. According to their attorney, this is what intimidation looks like. This is what happens when the government wants to send a message that questioning federal agents will result in your entire life being turned inside out. Most significantly, this exposes the problem at the core of American justice right now. Accountability depends on who you are and who's in power. If you're a federal agent under a president who supports aggressive tactics, you get defended publicly even if you kill someone. If you're the family of the person killed, you get investigated. The broader implications are terrifying. If federal agents know they'll be defended regardless of their actions, what constraint exists on their behavior? If families know they'll be investigated for demanding accountability, who will come forward? This is the whole purpose and evidence of the problems the U.S. faces. No one is safe if the administration tries to deflect what's wrong rather than address it. No one can trust the system if investigations are designed to reach predetermined conclusions rather than find truth. The political rationale behind Trump's approach is transparent but dangerous. Trump needs the Minneapolis ICE deployment to appear successful and justified. A federal investigation concluding an ICE agent unjustifiably killed someone undermines that narrative. It gives ammunition to critics who say the deployment is reckless. So instead of allowing an independent investigation, the administration corrupts the process. Exclude the Civil Rights Division. Investigate the victim's family. Defend the agent publicly to shape perception before facts are established. It's a calculated strategy, but it comes with massive costs. The resignation of 27 prosecutors gives Democrats concrete evidence of DOJ corruption to campaign on in 2026. It provides proof for claims that Trump doesn't respect the rule of law. It creates a talking point that resonates. Career prosecutors so disturbed they walked away from their careers. According to political strategists, this story has legs because it's not about abstract policy. It's about specific, understandable corruption. Prosecutors resigned. The Civil Rights Division was excluded. The victim's family was investigated. These are facts voters can grasp. Republican lawmakers are notably silent, which itself tells a story. When asked, most declined to comment or redirect. That silence suggests they recognize this is politically damaging, but don't want to defend the indefensible or break with Trump. Let's break down what this means, because it's not just about one investigation or even one administration. First, 27 federal prosecutors resigned because they believed the DOJ investigation was fraudulent, designed to intimidate the victim's family rather than seek truth. That's what the prosecutors themselves are saying. Second, the procedural violations are extensive and deliberate. The Civil Rights Division was excluded, standard protocols were abandoned, presidential interference occurred, the victim's family became the target instead of the agent who pulled the trigger. Third, this exposes the fundamental crisis in American justice. Accountability depends on political alignment rather than facts. Federal agents get defended regardless of their actions. Victims' families get investigated for demanding answers. Here's the deal. Trump's attempt to control the narrative has backfired spectacularly. Instead of quashing criticism, he's provoked mass resignations that validate every concern about DOJ corruption. This isn't just about Minneapolis or immigration enforcement. It's about whether justice can function independently in America. It's about whether people can trust that investigations will seek truth rather than serve political agendas. Watch for additional resignations as more prosecutors decide they cannot participate. Watch for congressional investigations into DOJ conduct. Watch for this to become a central issue in 2026 campaigns as Democrats argue Trump has destroyed the justice system's independence. The stakes couldn't be higher, the corruption more blatant, or the consequences more severe. We're watching the justice system break down in real time, and 27 prosecutors just told us exactly what's happening. The only question now is whether anyone will listen before it's too late.